Welcome to another episode of the Lux Saigon podcast, where your voice can be heard. This time, Luke joins us from the UK. Luke was brave enough to share his experiences with mental health challenges and the insights that he acquired from them. This is a powerful episode and a great display of the power of vulnerability. We know someone out there will benefit from this conversation. Enjoy!
Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lux Saigon. This is episode 56, I believe. And I'm here with Luke, calling us from the UK. What's up, Luke?
Hey Nick, yeah, good thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm ready for this conversation. How do you feel about this conversation?
Likewise. I think with this type of stuff, it's a very open, vulnerable conversation, which I've been putting off for a while, just because I know that there's a lot of stigma attached to these type of things.
Mm,
But I think it's important for more people to speak up, so that people who are struggling know that they're not alone.
true.
So it's a bit of a mix of nervousness, combined with knowing that it's a good thing for other people.
Yeah, right. Someone will definitely benefit from this. And who knows, maybe
Yeah.
it could even end up being part of like your stand-up act in the future. Could be.
Yeah, I mean the downtimes in my life have definitely been a good source of material. So
Awesome. Yes, I'm trying to figure out, yeah, how to begin this. Just yeah. Um Maybe I want to ask first, like, so this mental health challenge that we'll talk about today,
mm.
uh about how old are you when you experienced it?
I'm 28 now. I I think I'd been struggling with mental health a lot when I was in my teenage years, but I hadn't really heard about mental health, so I hadn't really identified with that.
Mm,
Um, I think in my teenage years I was struggling a little bit with anxiety and depression, but I hadn't really labeled it. It was just kind of feeling not great. But then around the ages of 21 to 23, 24 was when I had my kind of struggles, so to speak.
okay.
Hmm.
Was that kind of like a rock bottom period?
Definitely, yeah. Definitely a rock bottom period.
And was it the same challenge that you had as a teenager? Like, did it just accumulate or something? Or
No, I think there may be some deep unresolved things which got brought to the forefront, but when I struggled, it was really brought about by some external factors,
mm,
which then led me down a path which wasn't great for me at the time.
mm,
Um, Happy to talk more about that, but yeah, in essence, it started with a a concussion, which
mm.
sounds pretty by the by, but because of the factors in my life at the time, it led me to become quite isolated, which was kind of the start of everything.
That's challenge. How did you hurt your head?
That's the Yeah. So I essentially slipped and fell
Oh,
and hit the back of my head here from a reasonable height. And I look back now and I think, oh, that was so silly of me. I mean, obviously it was an accident, but yeah, I was unconscious for maybe 20 seconds or something. I don't know exactly, but I thought I was going to be fine. But actually, maybe a day or two later, I was struggling to string proper sentences together. I was forgetting normal things, struggling with
mm,
directions, and my memory wasn't great. And I ended up having to take a reasonable amount of time off work just because looking at screens just hurt my eyes and my brain. And
mm.
so I just ended up staying at home. And at that time, I was living on my own, and I just ended up feeling really isolated. And like I didn't feel like I had anyone I could reach out to at the time.
Mm.
And I think looking back on that, I've realized how important having a support network is, and
Yeah.
how important it is for you to lean on that support network. So whether that be friends, family, anyone else you feel a connection to, it doesn't even need to be someone you've known for a long time. In fact, sometimes it can be easier to unload that type of stuff
Yeah.
or share that type of stuff with people you don't know that well, because there's less of a history there.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't feel like I had that support network at the time, and that led to me feeling quite isolated and down.
Like how did you cope with those feelings of feeling isolated?
Mm, not very well, to be honest. I started taking up a lot of unhealthy habits and going towards short-term gratification because
Mm,
I needed some sort of escape from the present reality that I was living in,
mm,
where I was experiencing depression and quite a lot of social anxiety. And yeah, so that included, I suppose, drinking, smoking, all the things that come with like the party scene. And yeah, it really wasn't very me.
mm,
And looking back, it almost feels like a different lifetime where that happened. But I can see quite clearly now why I was doing those things. And it was just pure escapism from the reality I was living in. And it wasn't until I did the work that I needed to that I was able to overcome those feelings.
mm.
But really, those feelings that I was experiencing were acting as my body's way of telling me something was wrong and that I needed to do something about it, but I just kept ignoring it.
Mm.
So I look on the feelings of depression and anxiety sometimes as the body's way of telling you you need to push out. You either need to do something different, change your environment, push outside your comfort zone, or something needs to change. Whether that's talking to someone, trying something new. I think it's important to listen to the body and the
True.
mind. Well, listen to the body because sometimes the mind can be a bit of a tricky one. It can play tricks on you, as you know.
That's true. Like I've experienced recently, like if I feel sick, let's say I have a fever or the flu or something, my thoughts begin to change into like just these kind of just a dark dialogue can begin to start
Mm,
talking. And I'm like, why am I thinking that? I just have a stomach ache. Like, why am I
yeah,
having these terrible thoughts?
yeah, and it's so interesting how much the mind can impact how you feel in your body as well.
Yeah,
I'll just share a short story with you, which was quite a few years ago. Maybe when I was in this dark period, I was struggling a lot with injuries as well. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I was feeling bad in my mind and suddenly all these injuries were popping up in my body.
right.
But at that time, I had a really bad knee injury. And it started kind of with a little bit of a niggle. Then it started to hurt more while I was walking. And maybe a month later, I had a proper big knee brace on. I was like limping around. And I remember one day I just sat down and I just cried because I couldn't exercise. And for me, physical well-being is so important to a healthy mind.
Mm,
And I went to see a specialist doctor who used to be, I think, the doctor for West Ham or something.
mm.
And I got an MRI on my knee, and we sat down to look at the results. I was like, oh, it's going to be like I've torn a ligament. It's got to be something big because this is just ridiculous. I cannot move my knee. I can't put weight on it. And he just said, Luke, your knee is fine. There's no problem with it. Take that knee brace off and walk out of here.
Cool.
It's in your head. I took the knee brace off and I walked out. And it
Whoa.
was crazy because I was experiencing so much pain in my knee and it just needed almost my brain needed evidence that my knee was okay because it was
Yeah,
trying to protect it. Yeah, so that kind of just goes to show how much the mind can play tricks on you sometimes.
yeah. I experienced last month I had a really bad stomach ache. I must have eaten something that was not good.
Mm.
And I was in my that evening I was like in my bed just like oh just like bending over in pain. And I heard my mind say, you deserve to feel this pain.
Oh,
And then I was
wow.
like, why would you say that? But then also I could reply like, actually, no, I don't. I deserve to heal. Like I deserve my body deserves to heal. And at that point, I felt I was actually healing.
Mm.
And the next day I went on a jungle trek with my friends. And
That's
my
awesome.
stomach didn't hurt the next day. It really didn't. It's so weird.
I think that's so fantastic that you were able to catch yourself in that moment because I think a lot of the internal work that people go through when they go through bouts of mental health problems, a lot of the work is about trying to catch yourself in those negative loops,
Mm,
whether it be what you just described or something else. noticing your subconscious thought patterns and how it's been programmed is what allows you to then grow. So you need to make the subconscious conscious, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you've been through that process in order to do that.
It just kind of seems like when you spend most of your day in like a neutral state,
Mm.
then when your mind begins to act up, you can catch it easier because there's less noise to distract you. So it's like
Mm.
neutral, extremely toxic thought, and then you're like, what was that? That's so weird.
Mm.
I wanted to ask you, so at what
Mm.
point did you realize that the short-term pleasure was not helping, like the partying and smoking? Like when did you realize that was not actually helping?
Not until years later. Um, it's interesting. I kind of stopped and started with it over the years, and it was only maybe a year ago now that maybe a year and a half ago, that I fully identified that as almost like a problem for me anyway, or at least identified that I was using it as a crutch, particularly alcohol. I think in Western society, particularly in Britain, it's very much ingrained in our society,
Mm,
which, and I don't think it's a problem for everyone. I think a lot of people are able to drink alcohol and integrate it into their life without it being too much of a problem. But for me, it does have quite a significant impact on my mental well-being, how motivated I'm feeling, and how productive I am, not just for the next day, but for the subsequent days. And it's almost, by doing it, you're almost sacrificing future self for present self.
mm,
And there's also obviously a whole bunch of studies about how much it impacts your longevity and the risk of other diseases and stuff, which that's all that to one side, your physical well-being
mm,
in the future. The present day well-being is also affected. So yeah, it was around a year and a half ago I noticed that, but it wasn't from being in a negative mind space where I realized that. It was from when I was in a positive mind space and I was able to look back retrospectively with hindsight.
mm,
Because I think the one thing I would say is that even if you are experiencing mental health problems or you think you've kind of got over them from the past, it's a journey. I don't think anyone can say they've fully mastered it, right? You have to keep diving deeper into understanding yourself.
mm,
And even if you're feeling good one day, there will be shit times. And it's almost silly to want it life to be good every day because it's kind of a naive thing to wish for. And that will
mm,
lead you down dark paths, maybe partying, drinking, or other escapism technique or tactics. But life isn't going to be great every day. And I think once you come to that realization, when you do have bad days or dark days, the two things I try to do now are one is remember that good days will come back.
mm.
Thumbs up there. The good days will come back. That's quite an apt thumbs up. And then the second thing is to trust the process of feeling down, which is
Mm.
a weird thing to say, but I think Ryan Holiday has a really great quote, which is the obstacle in the path becomes the path. And
Right.
never forget that with every obstacle, there's an opportunity to improve our condition.
Mm,
What that's the way I interpret that is really saying that anytime you're feeling down, it's an opportunity to learn more,
mm.
to overcome a battle, to overcome something, to slay another one of our internal demons.
True.
Yeah.
There was something you said about, yeah, not every day is going to feel great. Does that, like, you
Mm.
mean like not every day is going to feel pleasurable,
Yeah,
basically,
that's
right?
right. That's right. Yeah. I think there's an important distinction between pleasure and joy or happiness.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
think the two often get mixed up.
because like if pleasurable is the way to be happy, then we should all just do math right now. But we know that doesn't work, right? Like people already tried that.
Yeah, that doesn't tend to work out well in the long term.
And
I think yeah, go ahead.
like I've had some challenges like quitting porn.
Mm.
And so like I've like when you consume something like that, it's like your pleasure spikes, but then after it spikes, you have a crash that's like the equal strength, right? And then
Yeah.
I feel like if I try to like, but then after I crash, if I want to feel good again, I just keep consuming the same drug. I'm just zigzagging forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a story that resonates a lot with, I'm sure resonates a lot with quite a few young men, or maybe not even young men, but a lot of men out there in terms of porn. And I know a few people who have struggled with that. I struggled with that in the past as well. I actually saw a really interesting graphic on that the other day from a neuroscientist called TJ Power. He
Hmm.
shares a lot about kind of the brain chemistry and all the different kind of chemicals which are produced and how to maximize the good ones and minimize the bad ones. And he showed kind of the dopamine spike and fall during pornography. And yeah, as you say, there's a massive spike. It goes up a lot quicker than is natural. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, as you say, there's like a massive crash. And if you keep repeating those behaviors, whether it be porn or I don't know, what's another, or meth, like you said, I don't
Hmm.
know, eventually your baseline standard dopamine level is going to start falling because you're
Hmm.
desensitizing your body to it. And you will start to feel more and more. The best way I've heard this described is just feeling flat during the
Ah,
days. And I don't know whether that's something that resonates with you, but
be like
in the
numb or
past I
something.
felt, yeah, like numb, like nothing's wrong, but you just feel like
Hmm.
waiting for the day to be over. And that's not what you want, really. Like life is such a gift, and you want to be able to bring your best self into every day. But when you're feeling numb, it's really difficult.
Like, what do you recommend for those? Yeah, for the moments that we experience where we're feeling like down or crashing or numb. Like, yeah, how do you usually
Mm.
deal with those moments?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing to mention is that everyone's different, and what will work for one person won't necessarily work for another.
Hmm.
And in addition, there is no silver bullet. There's not one thing that's going to just save you, right? But I have tried just so many different things.
Hmm.
Um, I think one of the things that I find really helpful is just moving the body.
True.
So
Huh?
getting up, even if you're not feeling very capable or you've got some sort of physical ailment, just doing whatever you can to get out of your mind into your body, whether that be actually moving around, getting outside, or getting into the breath through meditation if you can't move.
Hmm.
Um, I think those two things are really powerful. So exercise, meditation.
Hmm.
These are really typical things which everyone already knows, but yeah, we don't all stick to it in a disciplined manner.
It's like they're so simple and so powerful, but I think because they're so simple, people don't trust it because they're like,
Yeah,
nah, that's way too easy. It can't be that, right? And they just keep looking for other stuff.
yeah. And I think it's also really hard to be consistent and disciplined with something. Like I've done a lot of meditation over the years, but even since maybe I started doing it 10 years ago, even over
Hmm.
that time period, doing it for a whole month without missing a day is really difficult. No matter how much you like meditation or how helpful it is for your mental health, we're humans
Ah,
and other things come up, right? And so if you haven't seen the benefit within the first week of doing it, which you typically don't with these type of things, then it's really easy to stop doing it because the brain
ah.
is wired for instant reward.
Hmm.
I don't know whether you've read any books on habit formation, like Atomic Habits by
Sure.
James Clear, which is obviously an absolute classic. But when it comes to things like meditation, when you
Hmm.
look at the formation of a habit, there's no immediate reward a lot of the time.
Ah.
And so there's no feedback loop telling your brain, oh, that was good, let's do it again.
Hmm.
So that makes it harder. There are a bunch of other, I suppose, different, more maybe slightly different things which I've tried in the past when I'm feeling down or struggling. I think journaling has been really helpful.
Hmm.
I'd
Yeah.
recommend for people who haven't tried that to try journaling. Just there's no rules about it, which is great. It's your own personal journal and you just a stream of consciousness, just writing how you're feeling. And I find that getting out of your head onto paper just allows that kind of disconnect to come, and you can almost like close the book and leave it there.
True.
And journaling, not just when you're feeling bad, but when you're feeling good, is also really helpful, because then in those moments you write down the negative and you can go back a couple of days and see, oh, I was feeling good here. What was I doing? And you can use yourself as your own guide.
True.
If that makes sense. And there are some other things which I've tried which are a bit more woo-woo. I have tried things like affirmations.
Wait, but why are affirmations labeled as woo-woo?
Good question.
It's almost like lofty questions, right? Like they actually work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
actually,
I think
like in this
lofty questions is
conversation,
probably better. Yeah.
in this conversation we've had right now, you've made several affirmations, and actually the ones that you've made have been like, for example, like it's impossible to completely heal. That was an affirmation. And what, like being consistent is very hard. That's also an affirmation. But like knowing that now, do you wish to edit or do you wish to adjust your affirmations? Because you can choose.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done for keeping me honest.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the problem I found with affirmations isn't necessarily a problem, but there's just almost infinite that you can try. And again, being consistent with them is something I've found tough. And I've sometimes found that sometimes I felt a bit silly doing them, maybe. It's part of it.
This kind of sounds like you mentioned a feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Like have you, maybe you haven't seen enough evidence of how powerful the affirmations are?
That's right. Yeah, that's probably true. I really identify a lot more with lofty questions as opposed to affirmations.
I feel like they're almost the same thing. It's just one is a
They
question
are
form.
almost. That's right. I think putting it in question form really prevents the subconscious from fighting it. I don't know whether you resonate with that, but
or maybe like if you do an affirmation that is like a statement, like if you say an affirmation and your subconscious doesn't believe it, just adjust some of the wording a little bit so it's like a little bit more vague enough to where your subconscious will play along with it. Like kind of like maybe instead of saying like, oh yeah, I'm rich right now, it's like, no, I'm getting richer every day. And then your mind's like, I think I can play with that.
I can work towards that. Yeah, I think that whole world of affirmations is really interesting because it delves deep into how the conscious and the subconscious mind work together. And I think once you start understanding that your subconscious has been programmed throughout your life, whether that be by your parents, your friends, the media, and then that feeds into the beliefs you have about yourself and the world around you. Once you realize that that has been almost coded in and you can reprogram it through different techniques, that's like the aha moment.
Yeah. Then you can decide how you want to reprogram.
Yeah, exactly.
It just has to be like really intentional.
Yeah, and you have to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think once you see like how powerful it is, I think you will be more consistent because you see it's working. It's like, brushing your teeth actually cleans your teeth, so then you consistently do it.
But did you know actually with toothpaste, you know the tingling feeling that you have after you've done it? They added that in. So that because that sensation is pleasurable for people because it's like it's quite a novel feeling. So they added that in as part of the feedback loop so that people would keep doing it, because before they introduced that element, people just weren't brushing their teeth.
Okay. It's a good cue.
Yeah.
That's smart. Nice, man.
And one other thing, I suppose two other things that I would say when feeling down, just to go back to the original question.
Mm,
One is leaning on your support network, which we've already talked about, but whether that be friends, family, or anyone you trust to have a
mm,
conversation with, leaning on that. And then the last thing, which takes a bit of time and consideration, is just having a self-care routine
mm,
and knowing what makes you feel good. So for some people, it might be listening to your favorite song. Some people, it might be singing or dancing, or I really like having a bath. I don't know.
mm.
There's lots of little things that bring people joy. And when you're not feeling great, incorporating those into your day, almost like a little treat for yourself, can help brighten up a bad day.
True.
Hmm.
I had an experience. I might have mentioned it in my solo video, but like last year was
Uh-huh.
really challenging for me because I had a breakup that I chose to break. I chose to end it, but at the
Yeah.
same time, like I had these like inner child wounds that I didn't even know were there. And the thing is, like, I had this huge like fear of abandonment, and also I honestly thought I could only be happy with the right partner. And the thing is, like, after I broke up with my current partner at the time, I had met someone else who I was interested in very much. But the thing is, because of these like inner child wounds, my mind kept flipping back and forth between the two of them. And I could honestly feel like I was in love with this one. And then no, 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 this one. And then no, no, this one. But the feeling was like genuine. So like I think in the end I just kind of realized like it's my dog. Like the feeling of being in love, the being in love feeling is a feeling that gets triggered when you feel incomplete and you meet someone who you think completes you. And then I think some chemicals get triggered in your brain where you feel like, oh my God, I'm in love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the thing I wish that in that moment I had a, a support system, but I didn't. So like
Mm.
my options were like figure out, because also in this like flip flop that I was experiencing, I could also see what I was doing and I would feel so ashamed. Like, how can I be flip flopping like this? Like, I'm hurting everybody. And I never experienced so much guilt and shame in my entire life, and I had no support system. So like
Mm.
my options were like figure out how to stop shaming myself or just lose my mind, basically. Yeah.
That
Oh,
sounds hard.
dude, I was so lucky. Like I didn't know what to do. I just searched on Google like books how to forgive yourself, and like this one book actually came up that was called
Mm.
Radical Self-Forgiveness.
Mm.
And it takes you through like the traditional steps of forgiveness, like, hey, everybody makes mistakes. You're not the only person who's done this. Like all these things to like remove your guilt. Like, okay, that's great. So, but I'm still shaming myself. How can I stop shaming myself? And then the very last part was like, okay, so this is the radical part. And the radical part is you didn't know any better, so there's nothing to even forgive yourself about. And that's what kind of
Wow.
snapped me out of it.
Mm.
It was about maybe 2 or 3 months into this like terrible, like dark feelings, like consistent terrible feeling. And luckily that helped to snap me out of it. I was like, oh my God, yeah, like I'm trying so hard to forgive myself, but actually I didn't even know any better. So what could I have done?
Yeah. That's powerful. That's really powerful. I think finding that book sounded like exactly what you needed at the time.
Yeah,
And I don't think it's uncommon for people to experience those feelings
right.
in the scenario you're talking about. That sounds really difficult. And especially because you're such a caring person, you don't want to hurt one person, but you also want to follow your own heart, but you don't know whether it's your heart or your chemicals in your brain. So
That's it.
it can be
Yeah.
confusing. I think it is really powerful to learn the art of forgiveness,
Mm,
and whether that be forgiving other people or forgiving yourself for past mistakes. It's something I've been doing for the last few weeks, actually, in my daily meditations, because I also carry a little bit of, I suppose, regret, guilt and shame maybe of past mistakes that I've made, because I'm not perfect, and I've definitely been far from perfect in the past, and I've hurt people, and I now live a life where I'm a lot more honest and truthful. I always try to not lie, even just small white lies. I don't want a white lie ever. And it makes such a difference to how you feel day to day, because you just know that you are living in line with all your values. But when it comes to forgiving the past, that can be really hard. But that one thing has come up for me, which is you didn't know any better. You were acting based on the information you had at the time.
Yeah.
You've come out of it and you've learned the lesson. The real crime is when you have identified something that you regret or are guilty or shameful of, and then you do it again. If you really are sorry for that and you've learned from it, then there really isn't anything to forgive, because you didn't know any better. That was just your human nature. But now you can take that forward with you. As I said before, a lot of the times on the dark days or the dark moments, that is almost like the universe's way of teaching you a lesson that you needed to learn at that time.
True. Yeah, and sometimes just like the unhealed wounds are so deep that it really does encourage you to engage in some behavior that you know is wrong, but like something is encouraging it so much. And I guess that's when our inner work comes in. Like we just learn to observe these triggers.
Yeah.
And
I
also,
think it's like
about the forgiveness, it's like imagine like if you have a kid or maybe even a younger sibling and they make a mistake, like you're not gonna be like, dude, that was your fault when you were like you'll be like, it's okay, you didn't know any better, right? Like you would tell that to them, so we can tell it to ourselves too. Like our inner child is just a kid. Like it's a kid.
Yeah. I think there's a whole strand of therapy, or like a technique like inner child work. That's a whole stream of kind of mental health profession, which is really I think is really important for people to learn the art of speaking to their inner child and working through the problems, because a lot of the time, well, when you're having thoughts, it comes from your subconscious. And where do the thoughts from your subconscious come from? They come from the past, i.e. when you were younger, when you were a child. And I think in your mind you have around 70,000 thoughts a day. I think maybe, I can't remember the exact stat, I'm going to get it wrong, but I think it's around 70 to 80% of them are the same as the previous day's thoughts. And that just means people are so stuck living in the past.
True.
Until you can make the subconscious conscious and actually analyze those thoughts and say, is it objectively true or not?
Right.
Then until you do that, it was difficult to move forward.
And it kind of seems like the inner child is just something like we've labeled it as that, right? But it just kind of seems like it's like it's our nervous system. And there's parts of it that haven't healed from our childhood. So like we're just now as adults, we're doing the intentional work of healing that. And also I think this connects, like chakras, like the chakra work people do. I think the chakra is just the metaphor for the nervous system, really. That's why it begins with the root chakra. It's like childhood. You begin there and then you work your way up. And I think we're doing a really good job, actually. Oh, hey, before we go, I want to ask you, so like with after you've experienced these mental health challenges and you've obviously survived and you look really healthy right now, like what insights have you gotten from those experiences?
I think that's a good question. I think I've mentioned a few of them, but to just try and draw out the key points. One of them is to just acknowledge that not every day is going to be good, and that the bad days do come, and that on those bad days you just have to remember that the good days are going to come back, and that a lot of the time the negative emotion in the body is there to almost serve as a sign for something maybe you need to do differently or think about differently, or at least that's my own experience. The other positive thing that I've taken away from it is really learning how kind people actually are in their nature and how willing people are to help. People tend to be a lot more willing to have a discussion with you about these types of things than you would think. And sometimes the problem is in your own mind. And so getting it out there, putting it into the world for someone to help you is helpful because, as I'm sure you know, it's easier to help someone else sometimes than it is yourself.
Could be, yeah.
So yeah, I think those are a couple of things. And then lastly, I would say also that a lot of negativity that I've experienced in the past has come from the root cause has been expectation. And whether that be expectation for something going a certain way or expectation for a person doing something towards me. And maybe they didn't. Maybe I wanted them to wish me happy birthday and they didn't, or something.
Sure.
And it's a very trivial example, but you get the idea. I think once you detach yourself from the expectations of others and realize there are no rules, there is no objective set of rules for how people should act, and everyone's just doing their own thing and everyone has their own problems, then you can start to just realize that you are the one who's in control of your own mind, not other people. The moment you let someone else not meeting your expectations make you feel shit, then you're just a slave to everyone else's actions.
That's true, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Awesome, dude. We did a really good job.
Yeah. No, it was great chatting. I've been as I said, I've been looking forward to this and also been nervous, but it was a really good conversation.
Yeah,
Really
it's pretty fun, right?
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was really fun.
Awesome,
Thanks for the great questions.
Sure, man, no problem. I'm gonna give you a high five from Virginia.
High five from the UK, buddy.
Thanks so much, man. I'm sure we'll do this again later.
Yeah, sounds great. I'm looking forward to keeping on watching all your other episodes.
Awesome. I'll see you, man. Take care over there.
Cheers, Nick. Take care, buddy.